BBC Sounds. Music, radio, podcasts.
Hello, it's Anna Hill here with the Farming Today podcast. This time we visit a mega dairy. We hear why a House of Lords committee is urging the government to keep up its work in cutting methane emissions, and how a turkey farm wiped out by bird flu has managed to get back on its feet this Christmas.
Until you've actually gone through it, you don't realise how hard that is to come back from it. Now it's good and we're back to where we want to be, which is great.
We'll have more on that a little later. First, though, this week we're taking a look at dairy farming as it faces several challenges, from labour shortages to reducing emissions. An AHDB levy board survey in April this year showed a 5% fall in dairy farmers since 2023, 440 farmers quitting. But milk production is up as farms get bigger. Well, one of those larger farms is run by Fraser Jones, a third-generation dairy farmer who's been milking 1,500 cows across 2 sites between Montgomery and Welshpool in mid-Wales. The intensive indoor dairy setup, sometimes referred to as a mega dairy, sparked fierce opposition when it was first proposed in 2008, but Fraser believes it offers the best welfare and makes his cows easier to manage. Bob Hockenhull has been to meet him.
So we're standing between 2 sheds on Fraser Jones's farm. We're surrounded by 1,000 British Holstein Friesian cattle. It's a mega farm, or that's what some people call it anyway. Why do you farm in this way, Fraser?
I've increased my numbers up to 1,000 cows here to try and remain in the industry. There's so many pressures from government. They want to reduce subsidies. They want to continually have cheaper food, and again, the supermarkets are always driving down our prices. So in order for us to remain in this industry, we have to increase numbers to therefore dilute our costs. I don't think it's something that farmers would probably do out of choice. It's the fact that we have no other option. It's either, we increase our numbers, dilute our overheads, and hopefully by that way we can maintain in this industry and pass on to our next generation a sustainable farming business.
So the cows don't go out into fields. Wouldn't they be better off outside?
No, these cows all remain in the sheds. One, we have more control, so we can monitor the food that they're eating. We can make sure they're having the correct nutrients they need to produce the milk and to maintain their high health status. And the trouble is, when you go out with the weather we have in the UK, one day they could be eating really wet grass, the next day they could be eating a really dry grass, and obviously that affects internally in the cow and how their stomach operates, and that causes its own problems for the cow. This way everything is a lot more controlled, and I believe if you offer them, like we do here, loads of comfort, they've got brushes so they can go and brush themselves, they've got comfy beds to lie in with deep mattresses and memory foam, so they've got everything they really want. They've got lots of room to roam about. Our weather is so unpredictable in this country, and it's getting worse. And out of choice, the cows will choose themselves to be in the shed rather than going out and huddling under trees or hedgerows to try and gain some shelter or warmth. As you can see now, they're all quiet, they're happily eating or sleeping, and that to me shows a happy cow.
How do you manage the waste? You're producing a lot of muck here.
Yeah. So the manure is produced by these cows is all used to go back onto our ground to help fertilise the crops that we grow to feed these animals. And as long as we've got enough storage to store that manure, we can then spread that in the timely way that we do, so that the ground and the soils are making the best advantage of that organic fertiliser to grow good crops for the cows, and also reduces our reliance on artificial fertilisers that otherwise we'd have to buy in from the marketplace.
Do you think there'll be more and more of these farms in the future in the UK?
There already is. A lot of farms, have obviously increased numbers, and obviously to do that it means farmers have had to borrow a lot of money in the hope that they can stay in this industry. So more and more farmers are going larger, and that's driven by the markets. It's driven by the desire for everyone to have cheap food, which is unaffordable at traditional methods, if you like. So we've had to adapt to the market, and that's exactly what we're doing.
Dairy farmer Fraser Jones. Well, dairy farming is just one of the areas which a House of Lords committee says must do more to reduce their methane emissions. A report by the Lords Environment and Climate Change Committee published today shows 49% of methane emissions in the UK comes from farming and mainly from livestock. Methane gas is a more damaging greenhouse gas than carbon dioxide, but it has a shorter lifespan in the atmosphere. Today's report urges the government to support farmers to use both traditional and high-tech solutions to keep up the momentum in achieving methane reductions. Baroness Sheehan, who chairs the committee, told me action has stagnated and more can and should be done.
Between 1990 and 2020, the emissions from agriculture reduced by about 15%, and most of that was due to decreasing numbers of cows. That 15% reduction in methane in agriculture, that has slowed. So we really need to up the momentum in agriculture, in fact, and we've identified a number of ways to do that. Feed additives are one way. Another way is selective breeding. That's shown to be very effective in places like New Zealand. And another way is good husbandry. Animal health and welfare is shown to increase productivity and reduce methane emissions.
However, farmers are doing some of these things, aren't they? There is a dispute around at the moment that the recent use of a methane-cutting additive by Arla for milking cows seems to have backfired because despite rigorous safety testing, some consumers don't want it. I mean, there's not always a straight solution, is there?
No, you're quite right. And the controversy over Bovir being added to feed for cows is part and parcel of what we're seeing in social media when sometimes misinformation, sometimes conspiracy theories are spread. Now, our report is very clear that when it comes to methane emissions from cows, that the government has several options open to them, and only one of which is feed additives. And of those feed additives, Bovir is just one product. The government should really continue to monitor the effectiveness of feed additives to fully understand the costs and benefits.
Are you saying then that the government should actually be giving more practical advice and specific help to farmers to implement things that will definitely reduce methane?
What farmers are asking for is greater clarity and greater collaboration with government. At the moment, they have a number of priorities that they're being told that they have to look at and deliver. Greenhouse gas emission reductions, food security, and then, of course, nature-friendly farming. But sometimes those priorities can pull in different directions. They do need proper joined-up working with government to be able to deliver those priorities.
Well, another government responsibility is that the UK signed up to the Global Methane Pledge, which was actually instigated at the COP in Glasgow. Are we on target to meet that?
The Global Methane Pledge commits us to working to reduce methane emissions 30% by 2030 with 2020 as a baseline. Since then, progress has slowed, and we really need to lean in and start to work a bit harder on the domestic front. If we can do that, then we can start to engage on the global stage, because as with all greenhouse gases, we are all in this together.
Baroness Sheehan, Chair of the Lords Environment and Climate Change Committee. Christmas turkey farmers are at full stretch across the country as they get their birds ready for sale. 2 years ago, it was a very different picture. There were warnings that there could be a turkey shortage after millions of birds died or were destroyed because of avian flu. In November 2022, the British Poultry Council said the UK had lost 40% of its free-range turkey flock. Well, one of the farmers we spoke to for a special programme back then was Norfolk producer Steve Childerhouse, who lost his whole flock of thousands of birds in September that year.
One day they'd be really chirpy, and then the next day you would come here and it would just be quiet. I remember going out from my house early one morning and came out and stood on our drive, and this shed of turkeys on the end here. Every morning you would hear the chirping, and it was just a death of. There was nothing. It was just silent, and yeah, it was hard. It was really hard. Yeah, a lot of them died, unfortunately.
Steve Childerhouse there, who had to leave his traditional turkey sheds empty for a year to make sure the virus was gone. So it's taken 2 years to recover. Well, I've been back to see Steve and his partner Sarah, and the farm was silent again, but for a completely different reason. This time the turkeys, thousands of them, are now plucked and in the chiller, ready for Christmas.
Oh, my goodness me, look at this. We are in a huge chiller. All of your turkeys are hanging up here.
This is obviously what we want, because they're in here now, hanging here, and this is how they mature, like a piece of beef, and it just enhances the flavour, and that's exactly what we want.
Well, we've just turned the fans off for a minute so we can talk, and we're still surrounded by all these turkeys. Take me back to when we last talked to you. It was a really, really awful time for you. You'd just been completely wiped out by avian flu, hadn't you?
Yeah, that's right.
How did you pick yourselves up, though?
It was very painful to start with when it all happened, and luckily for me, I've got Sarah and a lot of other good people around who sort of support you. And that next year, we weren't allowed to be at this farm to start rearing it again, so I had to find somewhere else to do them. We got a neighbouring farmer who was very good to us, and he let us go down and use his buildings, and I'm so grateful for Jill and Martin Gulliver, who they were the ones that got us going again, thank God.
Did you have to do a complete rebuild or a cleaning process?
They've disinfected the buildings down, and obviously the buildings were then just left for 12 months before we were allowed to actually restock them again.
Sarah, does it take courage to take up the same thing where you've had a disaster before?
Definitely, and yeah, he's done really well to get where he has done today, which is, it's lovely to see, and it's great to see all the birds back here this year. It's great to see them all outside again in the woodland and running around and healthy and loving it, really.
It's quite important, isn't it, the environment that they're in, that they're back on this farm, because you are well known for having your birds free range, really free range, out in the woods.
Yeah, it's so nice to be back here, and that whole feeling of seeing the birds all out like they used to be here. This year has been brilliant.
As you're walking down the track in the morning, you suddenly hear them and they all sort of follow you around, and I go for my morning walk and they come and walk around the field with me. It's lovely.
And what about business? Did you get compensation?
Well, we got compensation, but by no means, you just don't want to get it for sure. So we had a difficult year last year, but this year is certainly looking really back to where we were.
This year, avian flu is round and about again. How are you feeling about the way things sit at the moment?
Obviously, everyone would like to have a vaccination, for sure. I often say it, until you've actually gone through it, you don't realise how hard that is to come back from it without the support of people. The guy who works for us as well, just keeps going, even when things get a little hard, come on, let's get going again, come on, let's do it, But yeah, now it's good and we're back to where we want to be, which is great.
Happy Christmas.
Thank you, and to you.
Much happier Steve Childerhouse and Sarah at Great Grove Poultry in Norfolk. That's all from us this morning. I'm Anna Hill. The producer is Rebecca Rooney. Farming Today is a BBC Audio Bristol production.